Hello, Radiant One, and a very big and a very warm welcome to Mastery, the show and podcast for brilliant spiritual beings just like you, having a human experience and wanting to lead with love in work, business, and life. Designed to empower, inspire, and uplift you, as well as give you down-to-earth practical guidance you can actually use and implement to live a more fulfilling and satisfying life. Here we merge the worlds of seen and unseen, magic and miracles with the mundane and the practical, spirituality with strategy, the energetic with the physical, and business, work, and life with a whole lot of love and soul. I'm your host, spiritual business coach, energy worker, and radical love rebel, Maria Saraphina. And it is my deep honor, my great pleasure, and joy to share this episode, this podcast, and this world with you. Because the more of us doing this work, the better our world becomes. In 2011, I left my successful corporate career and six-figure job. I did it because I couldn't feel my heart and I had one singular focus. Love is the way, and I want to implement that into every aspect of my work, life, and business. Naively, I thought that meant the heavens would open, angels ascend, path be cleared, and rose petal be strewn because I, so very altruistically of me, had chosen love as my way. Instead, everything and all things out of resonance with love has been illuminated to give me the opportunity to consciously choose again and do something about what I was facing from a space of love rather than from a space of fear. I did the work, and I'm proud to say that it worked. Today, I serve established business owners and experienced leaders wanting to do the same. Learn and be supported as you navigate leading with love, heart, and soul. Creating sustainable solutions I call win-win-win, meaning solutions that serve not only you and those you serve, but those that they serve as well, creating massive, uplifting ripple effects of love across our globe. I do that through one-on-one spiritual business coaching, mastermind growth pods, and the spiritual MBA, all filled with my unique combination of tailored strategic guidance, intuitive wisdom, and energetic alignment. If that ignites something in you, go to my website, mariasarafina.com, to check out my services or reach out and let's find out how I can support you. Having been called to this show and podcast, it is my strong guess that mastery is already inherent within you, Radiant One. If you'd like to own your mastery even further, download the mastery activation I've created for you. Originally released within my paid membership, The Elevation, I've now made it available for free to all. Get it at mariasarafina.com/MA. And remember, if you enjoy Mastery, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, or leave a review to amplify the energy and love being shared in these transmissions so you can reach more and more gorgeous, radiant beings like you. Today I'm joined by Curtis Rivers, who's had an extraordinarily successful career as a Hollywood stuntman where he triumphed over fear and conquered hundreds of challenges in film and television. His credits comprise 2 Guinness World Records and appearances in over 200 films and TV shows, including the iconic James Bond series. Despite decades of success, like so many of us, Curtis discovered that his chosen career no longer aligned with who he had become, and he set out to change that. Today, Curtis is a coach, speaker, and award-winning author who shares his unique strategies for an authentic awakening. I originally met Curtis when he popped into my inbox one day. Later, we connected on LinkedIn, and as with most of my guests, his name just popped into my head one day. I was inquiring within about who to invite on. And so, without further ado, here is our sacred conversation. Curtis, welcome to Mastery, and thank you for saying yes to my invitation of joining me in sacred conversation. It's like a stillness, but I'm very excited to see what wants to come through in terms of you, because you have a very, at least from the outside, very interesting background and journey. And I'm so excited to be sharing that with the audience. Would you start us off by introducing yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do in this world.
Absolutely, yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. It's a real honor and a privilege, and I've been looking forward to this, so thank you.
You're welcome.
As for me, my name is Curtis Rivers. I was a stuntman in the movies. And now I pitch myself as a soul guide. So from stuntman to soul guide, and I'm helping people to reimagine, realign, and reignite their paths. It's all
Mm.
about living authentically, those people who have got a bit lost on their way. And I hold their hand and take them on a journey to rediscover their true purpose and help them set off on that path.
Thank you. And how did your journey with spirituality begin? Like, were you like a lot of people that I talk with? I don't consider myself to be one, but are, they say that they're born open. So were you born open, or like what set you off on your path towards being a soul guide? I mean, you probably always was one, is my sense, but in some way, shape, or form. But how did your journey with spirituality begin?
It's an interesting question because oftentimes when you're born that way, that's your norm, right? So you don't consider yourself particularly spiritual. I
No.
was that child at school who walked around breaking fights up and wanting to help people. And
Ah,
I'm talking about, age 5, 6, and I've got really strong memories of that,
yeah.
of going about trying to do some good and break up little arguments and that
Yes.
kind of thing. And there's always been an innate sense of seeking freedom for me. That is still my buzzword. When you break it down, you keep asking why. I always arrive at freedom. And when I put myself back as that 5-year-old, walking around trying to do some good and be kind, and kindness was a big buzzword. That would be really analyzing it, the origins of being a quite spiritual child and connected and that kind of thing. And as I grew up through my childhood, what was normal to me, I had some spiritual experiences
Okay.
that I didn't particularly know was spiritual until they went away in my late teens. And
Oh,
then it's like, oh, in terms of premonition and remote viewing and that kind of thing.
oh,
So it began really early. And then there was
yeah,
that middle ground in the middle of my life where it became a movie stuntman, which we can chat about later,
yeah,
but where I kind of lost my way. And
yeah,
then there was a merging in my 30s where that strong call for the esoteric and a lifelong fascination with
yeah.
spiritual matters, that was where I did it covertly, like being in the closet.
Yes,
I'd be the big
yes,
tough guy on a movie set,
yes.
but go home and light candles and meditate. And I was all love and light in secret. And then it got to the point full circle where you just can't do that anymore. You're trying to suppress something that's bursting to get out.
Yes,
That's when the transition came in the last decade, really, of I can't keep pretending to be dimming my light to fit
mm,
into this thing that no longer resonates with me. And because
mm.
my calling is to help people and to make a difference and unite people and raise their vibration collectively and that kind of thing. So, which is what I'm doing now.
That's so beautiful. I'm getting emotional. I don't know why. It's just that's so touching. In terms of your early experiences, I wonder if you would share, because you mentioned premonition and remote viewing. Like, were you I've had guests where they've grown up in either religious households or they've grown up in spiritual households or not anything, like something in between. So how were you, I don't know, supported, or how did you experience those experiences when you were a child?
Yeah, so they are kind of connected to religion in a way.
Yeah.
My father wasn't really interested in religion. My mother, a bit like myself, always been interested in the
Mm,
mysterious and that kind of thing.
mm,
So she went down a religious path, from about that age actually. So when I was walking around breaking up fights, I was probably learning in Sunday school about, Christ giving out bread and just
yeah,
and that general, treat other people like you want to be treated and,
yeah,
and those kind of things. So there would
yeah,
have been a little bit of, religious connotations in that kind of
yeah,
mindset of being kind and good.
yeah,
So, that would be me standing up reading from the scriptures at church because that's what my mum did.
yeah,
And that kind of fizzled out. It was the Jehovah's Witnesses at that point, and that got down, with their particular mindset and
yeah,
the pressure to go door to door and that kind of thing. So it kind of burnt out after a few years, and then there was no religion, but there was a Bible in the house. I flicked through Bible stories still. There's a picture book that they had. That would then come in much later on. Again, funnily enough, my mother, when I was, I think, 19, My mother then discovered the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon religion.
Yes.
And in an attempt to rescue her, as I saw it at the time, like, Mum, we've been here before, what?
Yeah.
Long story short, I ended up sitting in on some of the missionaries that came round, telling their story, trying to convert and to
Yeah.
baptize my mother. And in the process of protecting my mum, I got drawn in with some fascinating insights into their story because I'm interested in kind of
Yeah.
archaeology and world mysteries. And there was some
Yeah.
synergy with what they were teaching about what happened in South America with the old Aztecs and
Yes.
pre-Mayans and that kind of thing, which was an interest of mine.
Yeah.
So I ended up investigating that and spending a couple of years with that too.
Yeah.
So these match in terms of they wouldn't anymore. I've got a far greater understanding of that. But in the absence of something else, when somebody presents a framework that,
Yeah.
this is a lower vibration, this is the backstory for this character,
Yes.
and it's a biblical kind of, as you might know, kind of a version of events that with lots of things missing out of the bigger picture.
Yes.
Based on that, then I experienced dark energies being pinned down, having my voice taken away from me,
Okay.
and that kind of thing, and learned spiritual tools to banish those night visitors, and so poltergeist activity, floating objects, beds being shaken, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
which I perceived at the time as being trying to get me away from going down a certain religious path.
Mm.
Change my mindset on that now, and now that I'm a little
Yes.
bit more open about different things and have
Yeah.
expanded my mind on that.
Yeah.
Because there's false light as well, isn't there, as you know, and we can be drawn into there very
Yeah.
cleverly as well.
Yes.
So there were those kind of supernatural experiences, and then there were the precognition dreams that came true,
Yeah.
not in their entirety, not like watching a
No.
video playback, but a typical one would be when I was
Yeah.
18 and I was skydiving. I had a dream where I was in free fall. And at the time, I used to parachute with these sneakers on with big tongues on the training shoes, with the
Yeah.
big tongues.
Yeah.
And in the dream, when I activated my parachute, the lines of the canopy got wrapped around the tongues of these trainers.
Oh.
And I plummeted to the ground, bounced, and I was in agony. And my ankle was really, really hurting just the way I'd landed. And
Yeah.
then to make matters worse, the parachute inflated on the ground because it was windy, and I started being dragged across the airfield with this pulling on this poorly ankle.
Yeah.
So that was the dream on a Saturday night. And Sunday morning, when I was due to go skydive, and I relayed this to my mother, my poor long-suffering mother. What do you think of this, Mum? I had this dream. Part of me thinks I shouldn't go. The other part thinks
Oh.
maybe I'll prove it wrong. Maybe it's just a nudge from the universe to be
Yeah.
extra careful.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think you should go. No, definitely shouldn't. So, but in spite of that, the way I was wired at the time, no, I'm going to go and I really need to do this training. I was training to be a stuntman. So I did the jump, and through a series of different coincidences, I'd actually forgotten by the time I did 5 or 6 jumps a day back then, and nothing had happened, and I'd put that to bed, sort of thing. And the very last jump of the day, foolishly, the instructor said, if you want to borrow my parachute because the sun's going down, you get one more jump in. If you want to put this on, it's absolutely fine. Test the brakes a bit early, blah, blah, blah. And jumped out of the aeroplane above the town of Thirsk, which was miles away from the drop zone. The guy had got it wrong. Very old timer, couldn't see through the cloud, and he'd put us out above a town miles from the drop zone. So
Oh.
instead of having the time to practice on the canopy, everything was about getting back to the airbase. So I just flew full speed ahead, brakes off, just about made it over the security fence for the airbase and hit the ground so hard, like really badly sprained my ankle, winded myself. And as I landed and looked up, all the lines of the parachute were wrapped around the tongues of my train. And by the time I thought, oh, suddenly the wind picked up, pulled me by my leg across the airfield. And from that point on, it was exactly the same, you see. So I went to hospital, I had a bad sprain. So it wasn't that the parachute didn't open and it got wrapped around and I bounced off the ground, but there were
No.
just notes in there. Maybe I shouldn't have gone and lessons learned, right?
Or maybe you should have worn out other sneakers like that. Like Disney,
Yeah,
like
that would have been good,
I
wouldn't
thought
it?
you should just put on another pair of shoes. Like sometimes that's all it takes. Wow, that's incredible. What drew you to becoming a stuntman? Like what drew you into that? Other than I don't know, other than the Daredevil part, I don't know if that's part of
No,
it.
it's confusing because as you've got like the real me that I've mentioned, that little kid who was going around all love
Yeah,
and light, very soft, spending time. The real me would be in his bedroom, looking down a microscope, looking at the night sky through a telescope,
yeah.
reading real bookworm. Spent most of my childhood in libraries, looking through dusty old books,
Yeah,
obsessed with mysteries,
yeah,
Stonehenge,
yeah.
energy circles, and things like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster and UFOs and anything
Right.
mystical and magical.
All the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd spend my time doing that. And I wasn't really sporty. So I was very, very skinny
Oh,
and didn't, I'm on the autistic spectrum, I now know as an adult, but I didn't know at the time. So I found it difficult to make friends. I felt very shy and I wasn't very good at team sports. So where I would shine would be if there was a group of lads together, I would have something to fit in where I could climb the highest tree or run and jump over the stream
gotcha. Yeah.
or hang and drop off something.
Yes.
Around this time, I was starting to watch a TV show called The Fall Guy. Lee
Mm.
Majors as a stuntman, as a Hollywood stuntman.
Yeah.
So between getting patted on the back and praised for doing some kind of daring things, which were a little bit out of character,
Yeah.
and seeing the show The Fall Guy, where somebody got paid to do that and it looked really exciting, that sort of set the seed when I was about 10 or 11 to maybe I could do this, maybe I could pursue it. So that was the seed of the idea, but it wasn't in alignment, as we said, with the true me.
No. Well, it sounds like, I don't know, for me, where I've arrived at right now, I'm in a place of it's not either or, it's both and. So that maybe was a part of you, and it's more about the integration of both rather than one part in or one part out, because in it, I find that in there's alignment and wholeness, like when we incorporate or encompass all of who we are in truth. So you did the stuntman thing, well, not the stuntman, for a good amount of time, what, 30, for a long time.
Yeah.
When did when did the spirituality begin to make its way back into when was it seeds that were already planted? When did it begin to make its way back into your life? And how?
It's as I became more and more aware of energies and in my morning practice of meditation, do energy work and that
Okay.
kind of thing. You become more sensitive to it, don't you? So you can pick up on when you're aligned in your heart center
Yes.
and you're,
Yeah.
thriving in
Yeah.
alignment. And then when you find yourself losing your direction a little bit, and you can
Yeah.
feel that change in energy. So
Yes.
as an example of this, there was a constant. The universe was tapping me on the shoulder. You've done your time on a film set.
Yeah.
It's time to answer that call to help people and to teach people and
Yeah.
to fulfill
Yeah.
part of your, soul contract or
Yeah.
purpose, if you like. And I was ignoring it because it took so long to earn a good living as a stuntman. It was like being an out of work actor a lot of the time. So the very
Right.
early days, it was feast or famine. You
Yes.
were either earning incredibly good money or you
Yes.
were earning nothing at all, and it was gradually running out. There was always that
Yeah.
anxiety of when will the phone ring. So by the jump forward 10, 15 years into the career, when I was thriving in that business, I was
Yeah.
earning, running a six-figure business, money
Yeah.
was flowing, and I come from nothing and no money, so it was
Yeah.
lovely to have that. But
Yeah.
with that comes the insecurity of how can I leave this thing that is giving me this lifestyle of
Yes.
international travel and
Yes.
adventure,
Yes.
a nice house, nice car, horses, whatever. How can I leave all that behind to pursue this thing that might just about cover the food, or who knew? Like, that's
Yes.
a scarcity mindset,
Yes.
right? So I was ignoring it for a little while, but little bits and pieces happened. One of my skills, going back to that little boy, was to write. One of my God-given gifts, if you like,
Yes.
that I find easy is just to write, creative writing, writing a letter, a poem, that
Yes.
kind of thing. And I'd largely put that to bed as a stuntman. But I ended up following my heart and writing a book. And around the same time, I got invited to speak at my old school that I went to.
Oh.
And they were pulling it down, and I'd broken a
Oh.
few world records as a stuntman. And my old form teacher had seen me on the TV and in the newspapers,
Yes.
and he thought it would be a nice idea to bring me in
Yeah.
as a former student,
Yeah.
because at the time It sounds terrible to say it. We'll touch on it very briefly because we're having a spiritual conversation. But where the students were at the time was high unemployment in the area, and the older students were actually being encouraged to get pregnant while still at school. I know, to claim benefits because that's what their parents did. Yeah, and it was, wouldn't it be nice to show that there are other ways? Just because you grew up in this very poor town in the northeast of England
Yes.
doesn't mean you can't achieve anything. Like, and the perfect example being that clumsy, unsporty child, very awkward, gangly kid who
Yes.
then became a movie stuntman and broke world records and that kind of thing and won awards.
Yes.
So that was the idea behind it. And so I went ahead and I did that talk. I didn't come in as the stuntman. I dressed as a businessman with these fake glasses on that were just glass to be really geeky and explain to them, the students, that I've been asked to come in to share my diary with you,
Mm.
my journal from being your age, which would be about sort of 14, 15 for
Yeah.
the people I was speaking to. So that was real because
Yeah.
I did want to be a stuntman. And the teacher, who I now know as Mark, but Mr. Gallagher at the time, my old form teacher,
Yeah.
he knew this. And everybody laughed at the school. So I'm now telling a true story there. And so I pretend to be embarrassed, bit Clark Kent pushing the glasses up. And I said, it's really, really embarrassing, but I've been asked to share this and I wanted to be a stuntman. And people started laughing in the school, like, who's this guy, you know? And I said, I wanted to be a stuntman and now, and I wanted to be in a James Bond film. That's all I could think about. And when I was 16, I saw this TV documentary about people jumping from a hot air balloon in the edge of space. And I just really wanted to do that and break this world record, this British record for the longest parachute jump. And by this point, they're starting to get a bit restless and
Yeah.
where's this going? And I say,
Yeah.
anyway, everybody left, but I didn't listen to that. And I'd like you to watch this. And the lights dim and I run VT. And then they see me doing stunts. They see me with James Bond on the silver screen. And they see me jumping out of a hot air balloon at
Wow.
32,000 feet to go into the Guinness Book of Records. And the lights come back up and they're all, we've got their attention, right?
Yeah.
And I felt really moved. This is the unexpected part, you know, when something's flowing through you greater than yourself and you feel moved, right?
Yes.
I'm feeling it now. And I really felt that strongly.
Yes.
So driving home that day, I thought, what a lovely thing to do. And off the back of that, I got repeat bookings, people were moved, and I got invited to speak at colleges. And suddenly I was going out doing these talks, earning the same money as I was as a stuntman, but they were like chalk and cheese. I left there feeling elated. I'd made a difference just in a small way. And if
Yeah.
just one person in that audience took on board and remembered the guy, that
Yeah.
stuntman came into the school that day with his
Yeah.
story, you know,
Yeah.
and the
And I
idea
can
that,
feel it as you were sharing your story. I can feel that. I can feel the hearts that you have touched. And one of the things in this world is that very rarely does it get back to us how we have moved or touched people or, inspired them or changed their lives. But I am certain that there's hundreds of people who might not ever get back to you, but whom you with your showing up and with your story, with your authenticity, have changed just a little bit of their trajectory enough for them to go on a completely different path and see something completely different for themselves. Like that's like it even feels like I'm channeling right now. I don't know, that's probably a message. That is I'm 100% certain of that in terms of that. Thank you for sharing that.
that's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
And so if you cross-reference that with an experience a few weeks later
yeah,
on a film set where we have to recreate a darker scene based on true life, and it was the Me Too movement. It was a
yeah.
TV producer seducing a younger actress in his trailer,
Okay.
and it was awful. It was a closed set, minimal people around, but I spent the whole afternoon recreating this horrible moment. It was
Yes.
mainly a courtroom drama, but they would do flashbacks to the 1970s when this deed took place, and I had to help recreate that with the actors. And driving home from that particular shoot was a very heavy day, very dense.
Yeah.
And, I've relayed this story since, and some people have said, yeah, it's just entertainment. And I say, I know. And you may argue that that might inspire somebody to come forward and tell the
It's
tale. But
energy.
just
And
to balance those scales,
yeah,
between doing an insightful talk, inspired talk, and touching hearts versus that.
yeah,
That was the beginning. That's where I can trace it back to where I can't do this indefinitely. This isn't right for me anymore.
no,
And
because you're in that space, like energetically. That's the thing with, I don't know a lot about movie making, but energy, there's things that I can't watch today. Like I'm way more sensitive to stuff like sounds and stuff than I used to be because of the work that I've done, and I'm happy for that. Um, but energetically, the actors, you move into that space, and to be in that energy, choosing to be in that energy, I can understand how that is heavy and dense,
mm,
which is that then what is translated onto the screen. Um,
yeah.
and
And that was the beginning of me. I'd never thought of it before like this because, and some people would think I was overanalyzing. You'll understand being in this spiritual space, but
yeah,
most of, with the exception of comedies, which I now that's what I specialize in. If I go and do any filming, I'm doing some next week, it's a comedy because that's putting some love and laughter into the world, right?
yes,
But for the most part, all stunts are kind of a similar, violence, death. If it's a
yeah,
car crash, an explosion, somebody's on fire, it's kind of like carnage and it's a lower vibrational thing. And I know we're
yes,
storytelling,
yeah,
but that's just the way I feel about it. And
yeah,
it no longer resonated with me because I had to make it realistic. I've therefore got to go to that place of what does it feel like to thump somebody in the face, and that
yeah,
isn't me.
yeah,
30 years ago, boxing maybe, training, martial arts, I had to do those things, and I come from a rough background, but that's
yeah,
not me now, and that's not authentic. So
no,
so why go there for the sake of entertainment or for money?
yeah, and and again, based on what you've shared in terms of, I don't know if you consider yourself an empath, but like what you're describing is not, it's not just, there's no distancing, and that's what I think makes it real, is because you're literally moving into that energy and that vibration, and that energy and vibration is then what's translated onto the stage or to the screen and makes it so real for other people. I'm like starting to, wow, I'm starting, like things are like, oh, I'm thinking about movies that I've seen. I'm like, whoa, like energetically, that's the vibration that they're creating, and you've chosen that you don't want to create that vibration. That's powerful. You mentioned meditating. When did you start meditating? And how, like, was that, because I know that meditation for a lot of people is like sort of like an easy doorway because it's very accepted, although I do consider it to be a spiritual tool. Um, for most people, it's very accepted. When did you and how did you start meditating?
Oh, I had a lot of false starts with the meditating.
Oh, yes. Hello, me too. So happy you're sharing that. Yeah.
So the usual journey that I warn people about, the monkey mind, and
Yes.
even years later, when you think you've mastered some element of it, and you find yourself wondering about whether you've locked the back door and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So a lot of false starts. I looked at transcendental meditation,
Yeah.
and with the breathing, the alternate nasal
Yeah.
breathing, and that's when I discovered 9 times out of 10, one of my nostrils was blocked. Every time I sat down to try and do this, it wasn't as
Oh,
free flowing as the other. And I had all sorts of stops and starts. And then
yeah.
I kind of got into visualization
Yeah.
and got good at that, incorporating all the senses. And that's one of the benefits of working in the TV and film world is that I'd finally tuned my
Yes.
sense of visualization. And a lot of this, and that's actually what I teach in my courses now, the masterminds, is some of it translates in terms of like where I would do a storyboard for an action sequence. That can then become like a vision board with affirmations instead of a script. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of crossover in
Yes.
finely detailing and
Yes.
engaging all of the senses.
Yes.
So I do visualization, and the first book I wrote was around that, just planting seeds in the subconscious
Yes.
whilst in that place of visualization, in the
Yeah.
forest or down on a beach.
Yes.
And then it kind of just happened organically because then, without realizing it, I was doing certain breathing techniques that were
Mm.
incorporated with the visualization that were bringing me into that state,
Mm.
like box breathing and things like that.
Yes.
And so that when I came back to it to explore, it was the door was already open. I just had to finesse it a little bit more because I
Yes.
wasn't particularly maybe grounding or,
No.
connecting the sacred feminine and sacred masculine in a certain
Yes.
way and working with
Yes.
sacred geometry as I do now.
Yes.
So it's got a little bit more advanced, I suppose, but
Yes, yes. I it's funny because for me, like I always share that I did like I was going to a yoga studio and I was doing this she had these meditation classes that would or courses that would last like 6 weeks, and during those 6 weeks I would get into it, I would do it, I would have an almost daily practice, and then once the course was over, it was like I just dropped off almost like immediately after. And I think I did this like 6 or 7 times until I think it was the fall of either 2008 or 9, as far as I can calculate. I woke up one morning, I was a, key account manager, successful, like you said, like having all the things, the apartment, the car, the fancy paid, like all of the things that you're supposed to have in order to be happy. Um, and I woke one morning and I knew that if I did not sit down on the pillow, that I would end up with a true stress diagnosis. Like I would get sick from stress. And so I sat down and uh, essentially have sat since. And in the beginning, it was only weekdays because I was have my weekends off. And today it's like I can't imagine not meditating on a daily basis. It sometimes it's 5 minutes, other days it's 30, sometimes it's with breathing, sometimes it's with mantras. Like there's different kinds, but I can't imagine not doing it. So, and I'm sharing that just because I know that, like, I love that you said that you fell off as well so many times, that it's not, people tend to think that we just like, oh, then we just do it and then it's just a straight and narrow path, and it's like, no, it's like there's a lot of twists and turns in that, is what I found.
yeah, definitely. And like you, I'm the same as you. Once it does become a daily habit and it's embedded, when circumstances, if I'm traveling or something like that,
Yeah.
there isn't really an excuse. We know that, but maybe I just have to get up at 4 a.m. and I'm with my
Yeah.
wife and I can't get up. I
Yeah.
decide I'm not going to get up at 3 because we only got there at 11, whatever. Just really, really rare circumstances when I miss my morning practice, I can so tell all day.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to do an
Exactly.
evening
Yes.
practice instead,
Exactly.
so
Yes.
it's noticeable by its absence if I don't do it, and
Yes.
it's just become the same as brushing my teeth or
Yes.
showering,
Exactly.
it's a
But
daily
it's
thing.
also been for me, like there are days like even now I'm what almost 20 years into it, I suppose, almost 20 years into it, dropping the expectation of what it's supposed to be, because there's days where it's like, I mean, it's orgasmic and like, and it's just like amazing. And then there's other days where it's just like, it's like a struggle all the way through, still after all of these years. And I share that because sometimes we have this idea that it's just going to be, we arrive at a certain point, it's going to be nirvana, and then it's like all challenges are just cleared away. And that's, I mean, maybe I'm just not there yet, but it's like that's not my experience. There are days, most of the days it's amazing, and other days it's just a struggle to get through. And it's about being with what is in that moment, is what I found.
Yeah, because I agree that there are all sorts of different energies that play in the
Yeah.
bigger picture, aren't they? Where you're at energetically that
Yeah.
morning, how the stars and planets
Yeah.
align, maybe
Yeah.
what's happening in the
Yeah.
consciousness of the planet,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all those so
Exactly.
many different variations where it wouldn't be the same every
Yeah.
time. And I'm exactly the same. Sometimes for years, I struggled to perceive color actually, and it's
Oh,
only really in the last maybe 7 years, like as
yeah.
recent as that, where I can really perceive color whilst meditating, in terms of
Oh,
rainbow effects, colors, variations in the energy
yeah.
fields.
Yeah.
It was always a little bit, I just start to sense it was like trying to touch fog and it would disappear. I
Yeah.
would grasp too quickly. Oh,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
no, it's
Yeah.
gone, you know.
Then it was gone.
But
Yeah.
I get the same thing. I have some
Yeah.
days where I just tune in. I have a regular kind of situation that I set up with sacred geometry and bringing energies and grounding and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Some days oftentimes it's like a wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
I liken it to slipping into a hot bath. I
Yes.
literally audibly
Yes. Yes.
settle into that. It's lovely, right? Other
Yeah.
days things aren't flowing, things seem a bit off,
Yes.
Um,
And
I bring
that's,
the violet flame and clear
yes.
anything that's
Yeah.
holding me back, and just but the act of going through it sometimes because
Yes.
I meditate for say my quick meditation to whiz through it. So I've done it that day. If I'm got
Yeah,
one eye on the clock, would be 20 minutes, something like that.
yeah,
More often than not, 45 minutes to an
yeah,
hour, but it doesn't feel like that, as you know. Some
no,
it still feels like half an hour, and then you get out of that and think,
it's,
wow, that was over an hour. It's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah,
Oh yeah, it's not always the same. So just
no,
release all expectation, and just as long as you turn up and you're present and you do it, and then happy days.
just turn up. Um, so you mentioned, starting these talks and different things, and I am assuming that those were more not inspirational, because I know that the work that you do now is also inspirational, but they were more tailored towards students and sharing your journey. When did it start to like when did other tools begin to find their way into your life? Was it through like, because I know that meditation often like grounds us, but it also opens our energy to other things. When did you experience that you began to, I don't know if you want to say, be more open to other stuff or to begin to incorporate other stuff?
I think being open to it has been forever.
Yeah.
When I was in that spiritual closet, I
Yes.
was forever going to different retreats and
Oh, okay.
learning different modalities. So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
kind of going back to that little boy in his bedroom reading books about everything.
Yes.
I was a stuntman, but fascinated with human psychology and how the subconscious mind worked and how we could access
Yes.
that and plant seeds,
Yes.
to do with the law of attraction, the science versus the
Yeah.
mythology. What is the reality of that?
Yeah.
But what I would do rather than read an NLP book, I would do the diploma, get hooked, and then do the full practitioner training, like hundreds of hours, and become, on paper, an NLP practitioner. But I never did anything, with it other than that's useful, that's fascinating. That'll come in handy one day.
Take it on the
Next.
wall and then
I didn't even put them on the wall, they went into a big folder with lots of other certificates, but it was for my own learning and interest. And
yeah.
I do that with Reiki and emotional freedom technique, turning up doing courses and clinics and to the practitioner level, where you're submitting coursework and real life,
And you stayed
training.
in the closet. Like that's wild.
Yeah. I was still in the closet all that time because, you know, I used elements of it when I learned Reiki and distance healing. I would send out healing and things to people,
Yes.
because that was a bolt onto a meditation. So towards the end of that, then I could send out a little bit of Reiki healing. But I wouldn't. The idea of setting up a clinic and hovering my hands over a real person in real life in a room in my home,
That was no.
it didn't appeal at the time.
It's so interesting. I had a conversation here in Mastery as well with a medical doctor. He's now a researcher, who is also Reiki master, and who he performed. He did one of the biggest for his PhD. He did one of the, I think that actually the world's largest scientific study into spirituality here in Denmark. A survey was sent out to 80,000 people, about 22 people, 22,000 people responded. Like 80% of those who replied back said that they within the last month had had a spiritual need. And yes, I was very like, whoa. And I had him on. It's just because you're mentioning Reiki, and he is a Reiki master as well. And he was talking about how to his own personal journey through that, and how he found it during the medical studies. He started training as a Reiki master as well, and to incorporate that. It's just, I think it's so beautiful that you're talking about, being a stunned man and doing all these quote unquote perceived masculine things. And then at the same time, you're learning NLP and you're or studying, but not even on like, you're not just scratching the surface. You're really like, if you're getting certificates and all that practitioner training, like you're going deep. And I just, so when did the closet burst open? Like when did, like, because you mentioned going back and lighting candles and all that. So when did you like have a moment of no more? I want to live my true authentic self.
I think I'd love to say that I got up one day and said never again. I'd love to say that'd be a much better story, wouldn't it? You know, that
Overnight, and then
I
everything
just
was
hung up my
perfect.
stunt equipment. No, there was a transition. So there was the decision that I need to stop doing this. I need to get out of this. As
Yeah,
recent as COVID, that was opening the door to
yeah,
this thing called a Zoom meeting. Oh, this is good. We can actually achieve quite a lot in our homes without physically going out.
yes, yes.
And all of these things started to, these ideas flowed. And that in the same way that I studied NLP, in the background, I've also done lots of other training where you would go onto a 6 month course to do with spiritual matters or, you know,
Yeah,
this kind of thing, where you would meet up with a group of people and talking to a mentor or a guide on Zoom and then doing some homework and then meeting with a bunch of people once a week and sharing stories. And so just other things presented themselves as I had already made the decision
yeah,
that I'm getting out of this. So as recent as COVID, that would be the point of like, well, this is it now. So I've discovered Zoom. I'm
yeah,
familiar with this, and this. So that there is a mechanism now. I've got no excuses. I can speak to anybody anywhere in the world. Because prior
yes,
to COVID, the
yes,
year before COVID, I did my last motivational talk and I flew to Los Angeles.
yes,
And my journey's always been about really being authentic. So I don't mind sharing with you. I got a five-figure sum for
yeah.
going and doing a 1 hour keynote in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And at that point, I started to feel like a fake because I wasn't speaking to school students anymore. Now I'm speaking to, that was a optometry conference. Their main, I'm talking to businessmen and I molded it and they're all happy with it, but it didn't feel authentic anymore. That feeling in my heart center flowing through me, like,
Oh,
you know, when you feel like a conduit and you're communicating something and you open your mouth and you barely know what you've spoken for the last few minutes. That would happen during Q&A, and it was quite moving. And now it had become, I couldn't see where I drifted off that path, but at some point, what I would do for a few hundred dollars or pounds had now become tens of thousands. And I'd chased the money like this could be good. I only need a few of these a year and I could stop doing stunts. And
yeah,
I'd rather be doing speaking and motivating people than doing stunts. So I lost my way a little bit,
yeah,
enough to step back and think, no, hang on. Let's not do any more of those corporates. Let's go back and wind it back a little. There's a middle ground there. And then
yeah.
COVID came. And it's been the last probably 2 years where there's no way I'm keeping up with the stunts and I'm out of the closet, if you like. So I stepped out and expecting some big dramatic, my phone stopped ringing, nobody wants to use me for stunts anymore. Like nobody even really noticed. The people that I was worried about offending, the directors and the actors that I was working with, they aren't in the same spaces as the spiritual people that I want to be with,
Yeah,
spending time with, right?
yeah.
So it was kind of anticlimactic.
And
And some people in that space came forward, actually. Some actors came forward and directors and really
exactly.
resonated.
That's the thing. Like that's the thing. I love how you said that nobody noticed because it's like you said, it's so climactic. You're like, now I'm just like I can't keep this in anymore. I'm just gonna share it. And then people are like, okay. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
And those for whom it resonates and for those like it touches, that is um it's elevating for them because when like again, and you know this, when we're vibrating, we're resonating on the authentic level, that is a whole different vibration and people can sense that. They might not know what it is, they don't might not be able to put it into words, but they understand that there is a connection here and there's something that you're like there's a truth that you're sharing that is resonating with me. And that's often beyond words. And so I love how you shared that is anticlimactic because it's like, I'm here, and they're like, okay, well, whatever. And also, because I've found like, I naively thought in the beginning of my journey, like, love is the way for me. Heaven's going to open, angels are going to descend, rose petals are going to be strewn, my path is going to be clear. It's because I had chosen love, like very very regal of me. And then instead, what the universe and God has done is like, here is everything that is out of resonance with love in your life, so you get to choose again. And you finding your way, like you sharing that you're you realize, oh, I was wearing off my path and then returning, I think is so beautiful because, again, it's not a straight and narrow path. It is winding and challenging, and the challenges continue to, the choice continues to appear. Would you agree, or like, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd even go so far as to say it isn't a single path, that there
Yes,
can be
yes,
various paths that lead to the same place, but each with
yes,
different lessons depending on how we're responding
yes,
and to our challenges, those lessons that come from nowhere.
yeah,
And I've had plenty of those in my life where things become cyclic, things happen again, and I think,
yeah,
how can this keep? I've already been here. Surely I've
yeah,
learned this lesson, but no, it's presented itself. And then
yes,
as I got older and wiser, you then have them aha moments of like,
yes,
I definitely was meant to do it this way. And then you deal with
yes,
you make peace with that. And then
yes,
suddenly you're in this completely different place. So, I've been through
yes,
those things with a scarcity mindset and
yeah,
challenging relationships.
yes,
And I don't mind sharing with you because about stepping out of the closet, very recently, there's things I always thought you could overshare, and you can a little bit, but I'm big on being authentic, but we're keeping certain things about my personal life private.
yes,
So I would openly admit that I went bankrupt a few years ago
yeah,
and that I got divorced because I've made over £1 million since then and met the love of my life since then, remarried, and everything happens for a reason. But I kept quiet that I tried to end my life as part of that journey. But I've now stepped out of that particular closet. So there isn't anything, it's all warts and all.
yes,
Because and that was a lesson. So even though when I've already walking the spiritual path in alignment, there was
yeah,
just that extra rock in my backpack
yes,
that I hadn't really noticed that was just starting to ache a little
yeah,
bit until I stopped. And now I've thrown that out by just saying, okay, that this is the full story. I got so low and so depressed that I had to train in my life.
yeah,
But by going to that depth of despair and the dark night of the soul, then you can rebuild. And I've learned so much coming back from that. And it's
yes,
like you say, then that somebody somewhere in the future might just need to hear that.
yeah,
Or anybody who has that doubt, yeah, it's all right for him. I'm fed up. I've got this. I've got like, no, I literally tried to end. I was in hospital for 3 days in intensive care, and I have been so low as to lose everything I ever owned. This is after making all my money, everything, not a penny to my name. I went to a retreat, an ashram in India, and I didn't know when I signed up to it. And this is only probably 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And I was with millionaires, successful people, and I didn't know that was a remit to get into this, but I'd literally filed for bankruptcy the day before. Flew
oh,
out to India and we were sharing. And I remember, I'll never forget it, sat by the Ganges sharing our stories, and I was the last one in the circle, and they were all talking about their woes or their challenges, but they're all wealthy and largely American group. And when it got to me, I said, "Well, I feel a little bit awkward because I just filed for bankruptcy. I have nothing, so I'm starting with." And they
yeah,
were like, "Oh, you poor soul," sort of thing. By the end of about 10 days, it was they wanted a piece of what I had. Weirdly, they
yes,
they loved this reset that I was going through. I
freedom,
was, I was going, yeah, I was completely free, no debts, no, nothing. So when you look at it with your glass half full, it was a complete life reset. And I was going back to marry the love of my life, who I'd met 6 months before.
mm,
And everything's been perfect since. Like literally, like, there's the odd challenge, like coming out of the closet, mentioning that, so I'm fully transparent. But each time I do something like that, then you just get lighter and lighter and able to help more and more people, I think, spread
yes,
that net further to be able to help people who've been
yes,
through similar things.
yes. Thank you so much for sharing that, Curtis, for honoring us with your honesty and your authenticity and your integrity. I think you're right. I think that does um, inspire and empower people because there is this pretty image of the world, right? There's this like, oh, we're all we appear successful, and I think that that's part of where spirituality took a turn for a few years, where it's like, oh, it's like all like you said, love and light and candles and burning incense and yada yada yada, but the true spiritual work is really like going within and illuminating what's hidden inside of ourselves and moving through those challenges. And I think that for a lot of those of us who consider ourselves to be spiritual people or spiritual beings having a human experience, because we recognize or have an experience of the wholeness of the oneness, being in human form can be really, really difficult at times because it's restricting, it's constraining, it's like it seems as though we're not making the right progress or doing the right things, while it's about truly living our lives and continuing to doing the work on a daily basis. So thank you for sharing that. Time is flying. I think I have one final question, but before I do that, do you have anything you'd like to share? Is there anything else you would like to share before I ask my final question?
No, just to agree with you, in the same vein, for those listening who are wondering, who have tried meditation and given up because they tried it once and oh, I'm not one of them people who can take that up and do it.
Yeah.
You and I tried many times before we've settled into
Oh,
a
yes.
daily routine. And likewise, as spiritual beings having a human experience, I'd say it's the same thing. There isn't just, you don't just get up one day and you've we'd all be elevated and
Exactly.
disappear off the planet, right?
That's the
We're
thing.
here to do and work through our stuff. And
Exactly. When people share, like that's the thing. When people talk about ascension, I get it on a energetic level. I completely get quote unquote ascension, but I also think that there's a reason why I'm here. I it's not about being done and saying like see ya suckers and then take off. There's a reason why I've chosen to come back time and time again to be part of the solution in the elevation of the frequency and the vibration of our realm. Like that's my entire purpose. That's why I have this podcast. That's why I do the spiritual business coaching that I do. It's why I share what I share. I am here to be part of the solution, and that doesn't have an endpoint. I am 49 now. Like I'm expecting to be doing this for the next 30 years. It doesn't stop. It's I thought, and I thought when I was, started my journey, like this will have an endpoint and then I'm done. Like I am elevated, I am ascended, I am like, what? And what I'm instead finding is the joy of living life, like the joy of like of the most mundane things, of adding the most mundane things can be spiritual and magical and miraculous. Um, and while I know that my time, quote unquote, in this lifetime is limited, I am enjoying it. Also through the challenges, all through the struggle, all through everything. Yeah. So yeah, I agree.
yeah, it's a cliche, isn't it? Listening to you speak there, and it is a cliche that it's about the journey and not the goal. But, a
Yeah.
lot of people do think that when
Yes.
I've made £1 million,
Yes.
then
Yes.
I'm going to feel X,
Then
Y,
I'm
and
going to
Z,
be happy. And then I'm going to be doing what I want to do. And then I'm going, it's like, no, start today.
Yeah. And I hold my hands about, I was one of those people who,
Yes.
because I had a staggered start in my stunt career,
Yeah.
were people who started with me who had the better car or the bigger the house, or they had
Yes.
their horses and land and
Yeah.
so on.
Yeah.
By the time I got all of those things, I was absolutely miserable. I had a big bank account. I was in a marriage, a loveless marriage.
Yes.
To everyone else, they were jealous. Look at him in his hot tub and his
Yes.
big house under the stars and
Yeah.
all of the trinkets. And I was so miserable. You cut
Yes.
forward a decade to that time when I was in India
Yeah.
to everybody else with
Yeah.
nothing in the bank,
Yeah.
but about to be married to the love of my life and
Yes.
in a very, very happy, spiritual, light place.
Yes.
And it's been great ever since.
Yes, and I remember people thought I was crazy when I quit my job. I was, a very successful key account manager. I was, like I shared, I have had all the things that you're supposed to have when you're supposed to be happy. And then I would come home every night and I would cry in my bathroom and not understand why I was miserable. Because I had the apartment, I had the car, I had the credit card, I had the health insurance, I had the traveled, I had the closet full of clothes. I had everything that you're supposed to have. And it's like, then why am I not happy? But I couldn't feel my heart. And I had a colleague who went to another colleague of mine, like, we have to stop her. She can't not quit. Like what she's gonna do. And I have fallen and stumbled and gotten like what you said, completely wiped. Um, and I am on my way up. And been hard, and I still wouldn't change it. It's like I still wouldn't change it. So yeah, and I think the reason why I keep reiterating this is because I know that there's a lot of people who are the same places where we've been in terms of that, and who has to understand that there is a way. There is a way.
Yeah, and also that it's easier for us on the other side of these challenges, the big challenges,
100%. Yeah,
to in hindsight, it's always
yeah,
easy to look back and go, you know what, if I could speak to my younger self, I'd tell them this, or
yes.
now that I
But
see it for what it is, I've learned this thing that,
would your younger self have listened? Because I don't think
no,
my younger self would have been like, like, yeah, right. Oh, you have it so easy, blah blah blah. My younger self would have been talking back. Would yours?
yeah, exactly. I was gung ho, and but that's us. That's how we learn these lessons. We wouldn't have
Exactly.
we'd have learned it eventually some other way, but yeah,
Exactly.
I was the same.
Exactly. My final question is, what is mastery to you?
Well, along the lines of what we just spoke about,
Yeah.
it isn't about reaching some ascended state of destination.
No.
It's the mastery is being in touch and attuned with your heart center, to walk tall in your authentic self,
Yeah.
and to always be walking that path whilst showing massive gratitude for the journey that we're on.
Beautiful. Thank you, Curtis. This was an absolute joy to be in your presence. What I'm going to do is there's going to be in the show notes, there's going to be a link where I will be sharing like where people can find you, the different books that you mentioned, and all of that, so that people that want to be in touch with you, they can find you there. Um, Thank you for walking your talk. Thank you for showing up so authentically and openly and honestly. Thank you for having been part of this conversation.
You're very, very welcome. Thanks ever so much for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. Thank you.
It's unreal. Like I'm realizing like time has just flown by. So for everyone listening and watching, sending you so much love, and have a wonderful day wherever you might be.
That is what I had for you in today's episode of Mastery with Maria Saraphina. I hope it served you well. For all the deeds and details, click the link in the description and help me spread the love of this transmission by sharing it with a friend or on social media, or leave me a comment or review. Have a wonderful day. God bless.